Nefer is the brand new character that has just arrived with version Luna 2. So in this video, we're going to go through her best teams, her best combos, and talk about exactly how good she is to help you decide if you should get Nefer and how to make the most out of her if you do. Welcome to Jello Impact, where we build and test every single character to help you decide who you want to wish for and build. When clearing difficult content like Stygian Onslaught, I can literally feel the lag when I'm switching, and I know I'm losing valuable seconds on my clears because of my ping. But fortunately, Gear Up Booster is here and it works. It's free to download and try using my code, and the setup is extremely easy. Just open it up, choose a game, and press boost. This test was done on my own kind of sketchy internet, and as you can see, it makes quite the difference. I even did a side-by-side test, and as you can see, the Gear Up boosted version is much better. So if you have high ping, or you're playing on a different server than where you're living, or your internet is generally unstable, Gear Up Booster might be perfect for you. And the best part is you can download and test it for free. Gear Up is extremely secure, trusted by well-known creators, as well as professional esports players for games such as Fortnite, League of Legends, FIFA, and enjoyed by millions of Genshin Impact players around the world. Plus, it even works on console and mobile. Check out my link and code down below, and let me know in the comments what your ping reduction was. Thanks again to Gear Up Booster for sponsoring the channel once again. First off, all of this footage is done with an early access server, and so there have actually been some small changes to her kit, some medium changes to her kit that do actually affect her performance, and we'll go over those a bit later. So this video will focus mostly on the overall execution of the character, of her combos, and the teams in relation to each other, rather than the overall power level of the character. We'll have to wait for future releases of that to tell for sure, but we do have a pretty good idea based on calculations and based on all the testing that I've been able to do. But starting with her build guide, I tested both with her signature and the Black Marrow Lantern. You can definitely feel the difference when going from Black Marrow Lantern to her signature weapon. It is about a 20% increase, 21, 22. It gives a ton of stats. As we talked about in the pre-release, Night Weavers is her second best, but because she essentially requires Llama, you might as well always have this on Llama, but you can have it on her if you want. Sunny Morning is a good option, as is Starcaller's Watch, as is Surf's Up, so is Tome of the Eternal Flow, 1,000 Floating Dreams. All of those are about the same as the Black Marrow Lantern. If you didn't plan properly and ended up with Dawning Frost and not her signature, it's about equal to those other 5-star options and the free-to-play at R1. And if you get refinements, it ends up being better. At Refinement 5, it's about 15% or 10 to 15% behind her signature. For artifact sets, as I said in the pre-release, Night of the Skies Unveiling, EM, crit damage. You're only going to look for crit rate, crit damage, and elemental mastery substats. Nothing else really matters, although energy recharge is actually better than we thought in pre-release, because you will have a bit of downtime in her rotation. So if you have her burst, it's actually better than we thought on release or on pre-release, and so using her burst while waiting for that Verdant Dew generation is generally going to be a good idea if you have it. Keep in mind, as you're building her crit ratio, she gets 30 crit rate for free from the artifact set, and if you're using her with Llama, which you should be, or at least if you don't have her yet Llama yet, you should be planning to get Llama, that gives an extra 10% crit rate as well. So you'll want to keep in mind that you got a 40% crit rate just like a Natlan character, so this build would be 84% crit rate. It's a little bit low, but it's what the stats gave me. She has an amazing Constellation 1. It's about equal to her weapon, so you can go either or with her signature weapon or her C1. For her talents, you'll mainly want to focus on her skill. Burst is secondary, so I would go 10-9, and you can actually leave her at level 80 unascended. I did put her to level 90 just cause, but level 80 ascended is perfectly fine for this character. One of the few characters that doesn't gain anything at all from level 90, actually, like nothing, which is pretty wild. That's because all of her damage is based on her elemental mastery, and that's where we need to talk about her nerf. So in pre-release and in the experience server, so all the footage that I recorded was recorded with a base amount of 200 elemental mastery, just like Llama. However, they recently decided to switch this to 900, or not 900, taking away 100 elemental mastery. So a base EM of only 100 instead of 200. What does that mean? Well, it essentially means that your final stat line of EM will be 100 less. This is pretty significant. It ends up being about 6 to 7% total team damage nerf. Some people say 5. That's a significant nerf. It takes her down from Skirk levels of DPS down to Varesa levels. But before you freak out, remember that Varesa teams do kind of a crazy amount of damage, and they require Constellation 6 Chevrus and Constellation 6 Eonson to get that crazy level of damage. Constellation 6 4-stars are by no means easy to achieve, whereas Nefer achieves Varesa levels of damage with Constellation 1 Ino, Constellation 0 Lauma, and Constellation 0 Kuki. So a much more free-to-play friendly, accessible team. I know that Lauma is a 5-star, but I still think one 5-star teammate is free-to-play accessible. And yeah, I know being C1 is awkward because you have to build pity on Flins, or you just have a bit, but even losing I know C1, it's still not that bad, and not nearly as bad as Varesa losing C6 Eonson or C6 Chevrus. So I would personally say that Nefer is very comfortably the 3rd best DPS in the game, again behind Moika and Skirk. To go over her rotations, if you're using Kuki on the team, you'll want to start with Nefer skill, then do Ino skill and burst, then do Lauma skill and burst, then do Kuki skill before doing your Nefer combo. Your Nefer combo is going to be skill, charge attack dash, charge attack dash, charge attack dash, skill, charge attack dash, charge attack dash, charge attack dash. So somewhere in the final 3 charge attack dash, somewhere in there, you're gonna wanna pop her burst if you have it available. That's because you're gonna be waiting for Verdant Dew generation anyways if you're doing your combos quickly, which means that you just might as well use her burst. There might be some more optimized rotations and combos that you can use for really sweaty players, but I find this combo is honestly extremely easy. I think that everyone will be able to do this. The nice thing is you can just hold your charge attack. It's just like Novelette. You don't have to be constantly inputting different charge attacks. You can just hold it and then press dash. Keep holding it, press dash, keep holding it, press dash. You don't have to be taking your hand off the button and keep pressing it. It's very easy, very, very easy. I'm someone who's a skill issue player. You know, I find Ito's combos very difficult. I find Wander's combos inconsistent. You know, I find Ryo's combos hard to get melts off of. You know, I find it hard to get 5 skills with Kanich. I find it difficult to get Moika's best combos. Jump cancels with Hutao are not crazy easy for me, but Nefer's charge attack combo is very easy. It's not, you know, I'm not saying that it won't require any practice at all, but I really do think it is easy. It might be a little bit more difficult on mobile because it'd be hard maybe to dash while keeping your finger on the charge attack button. I could see that, but whether on controller, on keyboard, whatever else, very, very achievable combo that everyone should be able to do. So yeah, I find it a very reasonable assumption, unlike a lot of combos in the game. For teammates, basically Lauma is necessary. If you don't have Lauma, it just feels so much worse. Like really, really so much worse. It's gonna be fine for the shield content, for content that heavily favors Nefer and Lunar stuff and Bloom stuff and all the extra buffs. She's gonna be fine. But if you wanna play Nefer long term, you need to get yourself a Lauma. Yes, you can cope with C1 or R1, but those are even further helped by getting Lauma in the future. So you'll just, if you're gonna get Lauma, if you're gonna get Nefer, really get Lauma, really. And then the other two are extremely flexible. I tried it with Ino, I tried Farina, I tried Kokomi, I tried Barbara, I tried Xingqiu, and I tried Nilou, and all of them work. All of them are good. Just to correct myself here, after a little bit of testing, I actually found Barbara was quite unreliable at getting the Verdant Dew generation. You can see here she runs out fairly quickly and is not able to stack them back up. I just think that there's an issue with her hydro application. And yeah, so I don't recommend Barbara, but any of the others are going to be perfectly fine. So whenever I say anyone will work, I do mean any one of these except for Barbara. She gets her max Verdant Dew from any of them, and really there doesn't feel like a huge difference between any of them, unless you have a high constellation, I know. If you have Nilou at constellation 2, that makes her far and away the best support for Nefer. The key also helps. She does extend rotations a little bit by taking up, you know, more time to use her skill because you have to use the triple skill. Farina, you know, it doesn't use her burst, so it's kind of a weird choice, but it does work. Kokomi, it is nice to have a little bit of extra healing. However, the jellyfish being stationary could be annoying for some bosses. Xingqiu provides some damage reduction, but you do have to like really be hugging the enemy, but I didn't really find this a problem. So yeah, the Hydro slot's very flexible. And then the final slot, the best is Nahida. And to be honest, I actually did notice a fairly significant power bump from using Nahida over Kuki. The problem is the healing is really not there. So I think that this could be fine against certain Stygian Onslaught bosses where they're not as aggressive and you're just really trying to get out damage. So I think it's fine for those. But if you're going into the Abyss where there's generally more mobs and you're going to be hit by more random things, then you definitely want to go for a sustain option. And in my pre-release, I talked about using Keqing as the sustain option. I still stand by that. I think this is the default. However, I did mention that you'd want to build attack on Keqing to maximize the Nod Cry resonance. So this Nod Cry resonance, the Nascent Gleam, and this whatever, your non-Nod Cry character, if your Pyro, Electro, Cryo, increase the damage for your attack. So you'd actually want to build your Electro character on attack. However, Keqing built on attack doesn't really heal. So I was using her, you know, with attack stuff, and her healing was just pretty subpar. So I kind of would recommend building her for HP or for EM so she gets more healing. You might as well go for the Sapwood Blade on Keqing. You might not always be able to pick up the leaf, but if you can, that's a pretty solid boost to the damage. So that's my overall recommendation, my baseline recommendation for Keqing. If you can get away without the healing, Nahida's gonna be fine. Baiju, also a perfectly fine option. Zhongli is situationally gonna be a good option. If you can get his pillar to stay and proc a couple times throughout the rotation, then it's going to work. But if the pillar gets destroyed or you mess up in putting it down, then you're going to lose whatever buff that the artifact set that he's using is, whether he's using the Deepwood, the Nod Cry set, or Instructors. Well, he can't really do Instructors properly. So whether it's the Deepwood or the Nod Cry set, you might lose uptime if you're not having his pillar up. So it's going to be a bit inconsistent, but against certain bosses, that's going to work well. Sucrose is also a good option, but you really lose her healing, just like Nahida. And she also needs to twirl a swirl reaction. She also needs to do a swirl reaction, which sometimes you're not going to be able to do very well if they still have a Dendro aura. So you'll want to use her before Llama, and you'll want to put her on Instructors. Speaking of artifact sets, like I said, you're going to want to mix and match 3 artifact sets. So one of them is going to be Instructors. Sometimes that's going to be Keqing, but like on a Sucrose team, that's going to be Sucrose, and you're going to want to adjust your Sucrose rotation for that. So, you know, use Ino on the Nod Cry set, then swirl with Sucrose, then use Llama on Deepwood, and that will allow you to activate all of the artifact sets here. But if you're using Nahida, you'll want to open with Nahida, use her on the Deepwood, then use Ino on Instructors, then use Llama on Silken Moon Serenade, because Llama doesn't benefit from the Dendro damage bonus, so it's better to have that on Nahida. And so that would be this rotation. If you're using Keqing, I already gave you the rotation, but the artifacts, right, we start with Nefer skill, then we do Ino on Instructors, Llama on Silken Moon Serenade, and then Keqing on Deepwood. So you're just going to want to mix and match those 3 artifact sets and make sure whoever is using Instructor is actually able to trigger a reaction. Although Ino on Instructors here, you're going to lose a lot of uptime. Maybe Keqing is better off on Instructor. Ideally, actually, you'd want to put Keqing on Instructor. Ino on Deepwood, that's probably going to be better, but then you're going to lose, you know, Keqing's healing, which could be fine. But these are the kind of things you want to think about when you're constructing your team. I don't want to give like, it's impossible to give every single option, but these are the things you want to think about as you're constructing the team. So have Instructors, have Silken Moon, have Deepwood. These are the 3 artifact sets you need. You'll want to put Instructors in the rotation as late as possible because the uptime is only 8 seconds, and you'll need the character triggering it to trigger a reaction. So those are the things you want to think about as you're putting together your team. If you need help with that, join the Discord server, and the help chat can help you figure out how to put your artifact set together. Looking at my Nefer pre-release just to make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, we did this. We talked about the teams. Yeah, you can do other stuff for the teams. So this flex slot, it can also be a Nefa, but that's sort of a waste. It can also be a damaging option, yoimiya or Fischl. Part of me wanted to, I had the idea, I was like, oh, we can use Lisa for the Def Shred. And then I remembered that Nefer's Lunar Bloom damage ignores defense at a baseline. So yeah, that's not useful. A lot of people would want to use Diona, but she extends rotations quite a bit, and she has a hard time using the artifact sets if she doesn't extend the rotation, so not a very good partner. Yao is an okay final partner, especially since she's on banner, but she doesn't give any buffs. She gives Dendro damage bonus, which cannot be used by Nefer. She gives herself EM. Yeah, so Yao just a healer, and also unlike Keqing, she can't even get an inconsistent Sapwood Blade. Moonpiercer gives attack, which is not useful for Nefer, so yeah, Yao kind of sucks. Attack speed from Dahlia doesn't matter. Kirara also gives damage bonus, so also not useful, but at least she can hold Sapwood like Keqing. Non-Llama teams, we talked about this. It's going to be fine until you can get yourself a Llama, but make sure if you're going to get Nefer to get Llama. And then future potential, like we said in the pre-release, Nefer is kind of actually right back to where I thought she was here, but for a different reason, maybe a little bit higher. But yeah, Columbina is going to make her crazy. I'd be kind of surprised if Nefer wasn't at least as good as current Skirk when she gets Columbina. That would be very surprising to me. I think it's possible Skirk will also get Columbina buff. Hopefully Moika doesn't get Columbina buff, but I could see Nefer, and even Flynn's for that matter, competing for the second or even first best DPS in the game, depending on how good Columbina ends up being, how much of a support versus DPS she ends up being. The reality is we just don't know how good Columbina is going to be, but I know that it will make them a lot better, which is the main thing. It doesn't really matter where they compare versus other characters. It's more for a baseline to understand how good they are, as opposed to it actually mattering that they're that good. But as with most DPSs, I really don't recommend pulling Nefer for meta. There is a bit of a misconception on like how good base Llama Hyperbloom is. It is very good, like don't get me wrong. But once you actually start getting good artifacts on your Nefer, it's going to outperform Hyperbloom fairly substantially, like at least 10 to 15% better, which is a big increase. At low investment level, which is Keqing main standards, which is what a lot of theory crafters use it, they're very similar, Nefer and Llama, but at a higher baseline where most players will end up being if you're actually playing the game and dedicated, like these stats are a lot better than the Keqing main standards. And so even with, even with not considering her weapon, not considering her sig, this is going to be an upgrade over base Llama teams. And I just want to get that out there so you're not thinking that you're just pulling a side grade. You are pulling an upgrade for your Llama teams. And yeah, I do see her getting even better with Columbina, but she's not so good that you need her. You're still going to be able to clear the nod cry checks with just Llama. So yeah, that's Nefer. Let me know your thoughts. I really like her. I'm excited to get her on my own account, but let me know your thoughts. Subscribe down below. Check out our podcast. And if you don't want to do any of those things, that is totally fine. Just watching the video has been more than enough. Thanks so much. Bye for now.